Hi there, I'm Heather Campbell. I'm an Inuit artist originally from Rigolet, Nunatsiavut. If you don't know where Nunatsiavut is, it's the Inuit homelands in Newfoundland. So it's the mainland part of Newfoundland, sort of northeast Canada if you're not from Canada. But I'm living here in Ottawa now, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to draw 4 different marine animals from the North and the Arctic. So we have a seal, a beluga, a polar bear, and a walrus. So we're going to be starting in graphite, so that's just a regular pencil, but I'll teach you how to use some pencil crayons as well, and I'll focus on 2 different techniques that will help you draw better as we go along. So hopefully you have your materials ready and we can get started. So today we're starting off with drawing a seal. It doesn't have a lot of color, but I will show you how to add color later. But we'll do all of the drawings in graphite first, and then we can color them afterwards. So the first technique that I'm going to show you for how to draw better is kind of breaking that main shape down into different smaller shapes. So if we kind of start off, it's like a general sort of oval shaped, and then it has another kind of oval here on either end. So one oval will be the head and the other one will be its back flippers. And then we'll have a better idea of how to judge where to put the front flipper. So we're going to start by figuring out how much space we need on the page. So so don't worry about these marks that you're making right now, because they're sort of guiding marks that'll help you figure out where you want to put your subject on the paper. And you can erase them afterwards. It's perfectly fine, or if you think they look cool, that's fine too. So we're starting off with this sort of the main oval shape that we kind of have that will become the seal's body. Then we can put in sort of this other kind of oval shape here for his back flippers. And then here and kind of do a general oval for the head. And now it's just a matter of sort of refining. So we have this oval shape here, but it has a little snout on it. So we want to kind of get the general slope of the head here going into the neck. Then you want that little snout coming out. Sort of, if you've ever drawn a dog, they look very much like dogs. So there we have its head kind of going down into its neck. And then the top of the seal is pretty easy to draw because it's just like a hill, basically. But it does kind of get a little skinnier and kind of comes down into the back flippers. So the flippers, if you look at them, are sort of like 2 paws or 2 hands kind of going like that. So we can have a little bump here, a little bump there. I think I'll erase this now because we don't need it anymore. And it's got its sort of tail, it's like a little bump. And then the flippers like that, and you can put a couple of lines in for the sort of the fingers of the flipper. And then here on the bottom, very simple again, it's just like a smile. Then, now that we've got the main area in, we can figure out sort of how far down his flipper is. So we can see kind of the curve of the neck here and here. So it's just as this curve is beginning in its body. So when we come down here, it's like, oh, okay, it's about right there. And then It's just two little smile lines kind of, and then you can connect them like that. So he's trying to push himself forward with his flippers. Now that those sort of searching marks that we made, we can just erase them because we don't need them anymore. We can erase this one here and erase the one around its face and neck. I think that's pretty good for now. And why don't we draw its face? So we know where the nose is, it's about right there. And then the little smile, its little mouth, and then sort of right where the nose and this forehead start, you can put a little eye. Now this type of seal, it has sort of like a saddle shape on its back. So if you've ever drawn the moon and you kind of really looked at what the moon looks like, it's all sort of, you know, jagged or rounded, almost like moss or splotches. Or if you've ever drawn a cow, it's very similar to a cow. So I kind of put this general shape, wiggly squiggly lines on the top. And this particular seal has a dark face, and he has a spot here and another spot down here. So now, to make that look darker, I'm just going to fill it in with the graphite pencil. And I find to keep myself from going over the lines, I'll just sort of put my finger there and it'll help it from going off the edge. And I'm just going back and forth and back and forth like that. So it doesn't have to be perfect. That's the great thing about working in pencil, because you can erase it. There's also something else you can do with pencil which is really fun, is you can smudge it. So if you don't want those lines to look really dark like that, you can kind of smudge it a bit with your finger, and then it just looks softer and more natural, kind of like that. Or if you want to make it even darker, so the lines that we made earlier were in this direction, but if we want to go in the opposite direction instead, and use your finger as a guide again, this is cross-hatching. So if you were to really look at it, they look like little tiny squares. And oh, it's a bit of a shadow there. I hope you can still see. Let me move over here, see if you can kind of see it a bit better. There. So maybe I'll show you a bit here before I smudge it out. So there you can see it's sort of like, you know, the pattern on your screen door. And then we can darken that again with our finger, smudge it out. If you want to make the edges sharp again, you can just go in with your eraser. And there we go. So we've kind of sharpened it up again. And you have a seal. Okay, so the second creature that we're going to create is a beluga whale. So I know the belugas are very often people's favorites because they're very cute. They look like they're smiling. I'm just going to show you again the same technique that we had used earlier, where we're breaking down the shapes into smaller shapes. This one, it's got a bit more complicated shape because we don't realize that, you know, it sort of is straight along its back, but then it has a curve that's its tail. So we're going to again kind of judge sort of where the beginning and the end of our drawing is, and then kind of that top part of his back. So it's sort of, it's not straight up and down, it's got a curve on the bottom, so we're going to kind of put that curve in. So it's a little bit like an oval that's fatter on one end. And then the same with the head, is sort of like a rectangle there. So let's kind of put a rectangle in for his head. And then we have sort of a smile for the tail. And again, a smile coming up. And sort of a triangle shape for that part of the end of its tail. So once we get that general shape in, we can, again, like with the seal, we'll do some details. So the fun thing about belugas, I've actually never seen a beluga in real life, but while I was living out here in Ottawa, there was a beluga that visited my hometown. It was the first beluga that anyone had seen in decades, because they don't normally come that far south. My hometown is actually the most southerly Inuit community in the world. So this beluga came into the harbor of our town, and everyone was just so shocked. I know Inuit in Nunavut and Nunavik, for example, they actually do eat beluga. And the skin of the beluga is called muktuk. The skin and the blubber, you can eat it like that. But in our hometown, we didn't normally hunt whales, so we didn't bother this whale that came to town. People started going out to greet him, and he ended up, someone had thrown him like a beach ball. So he was playing with the beach ball in the water, and people got photographs, and it actually made the CBC News. Okay, so to get back to the drawing though, you can sort of see that I made these sort of 3 bumps for its head. So one is for that forehead bump, and then a little bump on the back of his head that comes into his neck, and then the bump of his snout, and then the bump of his chin, kind of coming into his neck or her neck. I keep saying he, I shouldn't do that, but we can also start erasing some of those guiding lines. I realized I probably made him too skinny, so I brought this line down a bit more, or to fill them out. And I think I made his tail maybe a bit too skinny, so there, and a bit too fat up here. So yeah, take your time with it. And you can always refine as you go. Same thing with this little line. Let's erase it. Now we have a better idea of where his eye goes, which is sort of right there. And then again with his fin, it's sort of round about a little more than equal distance here to here as it is here to there. So we go here to here, okay, here to there, right about here. And that's how you can kind of figure out where its fin is. So just a little line. If you ever made flowers, it really reminds me of a flower petal that sort of comes in, but then like a little raindrop at the bottom there. So that's a bit too long. Let's erase that and erase our kind of guiding line again. Another tricky part is the beluga's back fin, but we've already made that sort of rounded, it's almost like the letter Y. And then here it's like the letter M, or like, you know, an open book. Have you ever drawn a book like that? So we can start at the tip. It kind of comes down, and then you do your M, and it comes back up. So again, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be recognizable. And people will appreciate all the time and effort that you made, that you took into making your drawing. So that's actually pretty good, I think. With this drawing of the polar bear, it's going to be a bit more complicated, so I'm going to teach you how to do this grid technique. So I'm just going to put a frame around the bear, so he's kind of in a rectangle. You can use, I'm pretty good at kind of guessing, but if you really want to do a great job, you can measure it all and make sure everything is parallel. But I think it'll be okay like this. So you can use the edge of your ruler as your guide to make the corners nice and straight. And same thing, we want it kind of roughly in the, we want it in the middle. Like that. And I think, I wonder, let's just do half. No, I think we need probably 8 squares for this one. So one in the middle, and one splitting this up into 4, and this one splitting it up into 4. Thing is, we have to draw that, well, we can just, since they're on the same page, let's do it like this, just for the sake of speed. I will it's moving around a bit, but that's okay. So, because I do have a ruler, it's 3 and almost 3.5, so let's do 1, 2, 3, and yeah, so this one takes a bit more time, but I think it really will, be worth it. So that's 1.5. Do 1.5 on this side. Connect them. And this is, what is that? I don't know inches well enough to know what that is, but I know what it looks like. Oh, I forgot because I was talking. Me and math don't get along. I hope, can you see? Am I doing almost 2? Again, almost 2, but I think I made it a bit crooked and then put 2 on the bottom. And then half. And now that we have our grid created, we can actually use it to help guide where to make our elements of our polar bear. So instead of having to try to draw the whole polar bear all at once, we're basically just going to draw what's in each square. And then they'll all come together kind of like a puzzle. So let me just check and make sure you can see all the squares in there. And you can still see the bear, yep. Okay, so let's start with the bear's head. So here, we'll start with sort of these 2 lines, I think. So his forehead's sort of halfway and about 1/4 coming down. So there's the slope of his head, then the slope of his forehead, and his nose comes out about here. So we know to kind of go like that. And then this line kind of starts right in the corner, comes up here, and then all you do is connect them. So yeah, it looks pretty good. So now we can move on to this here. which is fairly simple. It's kind of like about halfway. So we kind of come up, and then very small slope coming down here. Same with this one. Just sort of reminds me of snowbanks. Now for this one, we know it starts a little bit down here, but then this leg is sort of halfway across the square. So now we can kind of generally come down like that, and this little tail kind of like that. Not bad. So now maybe we know where this starts. We know his foot ends down here, and then it sort of comes up on an angle and then a bump. So we're going to judge the angle and then the bump. Yeah. And then this will be a little harder, I think. So we'll like, okay, that leg starts sort of where the bump starts. This foot is up a little bit. And so we'll kind of come in. And then it's like looks like a nose if you look at the negative shape. Sometimes it helps to look at the negative shape. So it's like the space in between things. So that sort of looks like a nose. Okay, do we have a nose? Yeah, kind of. It's a little off. That's okay. It'll still look like a bear. Then we have a slope that sort of lines up with this part. And then this is almost coming straight down. And we'll give him a couple of claws. There. Now for this other leg, we know that it kind of comes up like this. Maybe it's a bit too far. And so this here is what? Kind of like a third. So we'll start about there. Comes down at a little bit of an angle. And then sort of straight. We just line it up with that other claw, or the other paw, and then a couple of claws. And then we can do his belly. So it comes down about roughly a third, about right there, and connects, what, about halfway up this part of his leg. Since we're here, we may as well just continue it in. There. Now where does this leg start? I think about a quarter, a little less than a quarter of the way. So we're making little measurement marks, and that's where we'll start this curve of his leg. We know the paw is about halfway across the square and comes about a quarter of the way. There's a little angle here, so we'll go up. And this is kind of straight, so we'll sort of go straight up. Now, we want to kind of continue this neck line. So where does this leg start? Kind of a third of the way in. But right there. So now we just sort of connect them. This paw just kind of looks the same as the other one, but higher up. And we can add a couple of claws in there. Hey, that didn't take long at all. So now we can put in the details of the nose And the mouth. Oh, we got a guiding line that we can erase. Then the eye is sort of where the snout and the forehead meet. So we make like that. Where's this ear? It's about maybe a quarter of the way in. Kind of where his skull goes into his neck. So we make a little C with another C, darken it, and there you go, you have it there. For our last drawing, I am going to do a walrus. And just for the sake of time, I'm not going to do the grid, we're going to do the shapes method again. So like before, we kind of get a general idea of the space that we want it to take up. So it's sort of like a, oh, I don't know, what do you think it's shaped like? Kind of like a potato. It's like a potato with a big bump on one end. So I'm kind of getting the general, very general shape. And then we've got the bump for his head. That's about, what, a third of the way. So 1, 2, 3. Then we have kind of this rounded off like a, kind of reminds me of a pillow or a cushion shape for his head. It's on a bit of an angle. So about right there, we make this kind of pillow or cushion shape. And then while we're there, we'll kind of put in a couple of lines that we know will turn into the tusks. Yeah, that's pretty good. Now we can refine the shape and put in the details. So this side of his body comes out just before the tusk ends. And it's kind of rounded, but it's got sort of corners here and there. There. Then we'll add a bit more of shape, sort of the rounded area here and there. We'll refine a bit on our pillow. So it's kind of like that. It'll come in a bit and come out. So it's sort of like two crescents on either side, and that comes out. And here sort of comes down. So we've got our tusks here. Now we want to make this sort of flower petal or upside, or like a teardrop starting just above that tusk. So we're going to, that's where his mouth is sort of shaping around the tusks. There we go. You can see it's sort of kind of like two teardrops or petals like that. So we'll kind of make that a bit more noticeable. Yeah. Then he's got his nose or nostrils, so we'll put those in. And then the eye, have to make it too perfect. That should do the trick. I think I did it too high up. Let's try to fix it a little bit. And the tusks. Yeah. Then kind of we can start erasing our guidelines again. Yeah, pretty good. And then here it sort of looks like he's got like a parted hairdo. So his head kind of comes in like that and across and down. Let's do some erasing again. Oops. There, so I think I had his back up too high. So sometimes you'll see artists doing this where they take their pencil and they sort of look in the air like, It's because they're trying to see how different elements of the drawing line up. So that part of his head sort of lines up with his eye. Yeah, that's about right. Then it slopes down a little bit. Then this main part kind of lines up with this part. So we'll go, okay. And then it comes down a bit more and narrows again. That lines up with about right here. And then we'll sort of round it off. And we'll get ready to do the flippers. So where does this one start? Kind of, you come down straight from the tusk. It'll be about right there. And it's like a V shape. And then it comes here and then connects up. Yep. So where does this start? Kind of just across from his head. So we'll go about right there. So it's sort of like an angle here again. So kind of coming down, going across. And we have another angle coming up. It's almost a right angle. And that starts about there. So we'll come in, and these are kind of the rolls of blubber. Put those in. Now to get kind of the shape of this belly. And it's sort of another, yeah. Now we can get a better idea of this flipper. Kind of starts right here, so kind of note the angle, and then kind of a ragged edge there where his flipper is. So now we can kind of have fun and give him some rolls. You can kind of, there we go. There. This is sort of a complicated area, but it doesn't have to be perfect. You can kind of tell this is sort of like a, well, it's sort of like a heart. Huh. So let's make this sort of heart. Now we've got this angle and this angle. And then this other angle coming in here is the flipper. And we just echo it on the other side. This is another V. And the same thing, you can just sort of have an impression of where that flipper is. Kind of see the joint there. Like that. There, we've got a walrus. So now, I told you that I was going to give you an idea of how to work with pencil crayons. So I think all of the other animals that we've drawn are just like seals are mostly black and gray and white. So that's not terribly exciting for coloring pencils. Beluga, white, of course. Polar bear, white, but did you know that polar bears actually have black skin underneath the white fur, which is neat, but we can't really draw it. So we're going to do our walrus instead. And the walrus they have a lot of whiskers. You can sort of see that I made some in here. But the thing is, walrus whiskers are kind of clear. So they look almost like, they remind me of glass noodles, like, you know, in Asian cooking. That's sort of what they look like. But I guess we'll have to draw them in black so we can see them. Or if we were doing a huge piece, we could actually use our eraser and make white or clear whiskers like that. But we are not doing that today, but that's an idea for you when you're home and you have lots of time. But walruses are mostly brown. So I have these 2 brown pencil crayons, and I have this black pencil crayon too. So we'll stick with the graphite for this one. We'll just do it very dark like I did before. I'm going to have my finger here so it'll kind of help it from going over the line. So I did one direction that way. I'm going to do the other direction the other way. And I'll make it nice and dark. Now for the rest of his body, I think, oh, we need it nice and dark under here because it's a shadow underneath. Oh, can we see that? Yep. There's like a shadow underneath his sort of snout in between the tusks. So we want to make that nice and dark. I think I will add some blue because sometimes you notice that in the shade that the sun has a lot of orange and yellow light. The shadows have blue in them. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and do the blue. If you want to make something look more three-dimensional, then you kind of shade around the edges where you know that area isn't getting as much light and sun. So, same with his sort of nostrils and eyes. There. And their heads are a bit light. You know what? I've never seen a walrus in real life either. And that's because they don't normally come down as far south as my hometown. We have a lot of seals. We have caribou, moose, so many different types of seabirds. We have ptarmigan, grouse. So these are a lot of the things that I ate growing up. I think some of you may have heard about the very high prices of food in the north, and it can be very difficult if you're going to try to get all of the food that you eat from the grocery store because it's so expensive. A lot of people still hunt. Hunting is expensive too because you need ammunition, you need supplies, you need gas for your snowmobile or your boat or your four-wheeler, whatever it is that you're going out on the land with. But the food is organic, it's nutritious, and it's delicious as well. So I'd say probably half of what I ate growing up came from the land. So in the summer there were a lot of ducks. My grandfather was actually a salmon fisherman. So we ate tons and tons of salmon and other fish during the summertime, as well as ducks. Not so much rabbits. We ate rabbits more so in the winter. So yeah, I think it really did help people stay healthy. But in the fall, my grandfather would hunt for Canada geese, And those are mostly for special occasions like Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, Easter. Any special occasion, we'd often have Canada Goose to eat. In the winter, we also had caribou. But because the caribou populations have gone down so much in Labrador, we're not allowed to hunt them anymore. So this year in Nunatsiavut in northern Labrador, the Nunatsiavut self-government actually bought caribou meat from another Inuit region. They brought it in to give to families so that they could have just a taste of caribou meat again. I know if you're living in Canada now, but you're from a different country and a different culture, and you know how you feel when you haven't had your traditional food for a very long time. I think that's how most people felt when they got a little bit of caribou again after so many years of not having any. Oh, back to the drawing. You can see I'm kind of going around some of these edges here to try to make this walrus look a bit more rounded. So I was going in this direction at the beginning, but then I started going in the direction of where his blubber rolls would be. So I think I might kind of keep going with that idea. So cover up the direction of those original lines that I did. And we kind of try to soften it out. Let's see if it'll soften with our finger. A little bit. But this is where you can kind of add layers and just keep building it up, the color, until you have something that you like. So here, I'm just trying to make it a bit darker here under his belly, where I know the light would be hitting more up here, but wouldn't make it all the way down here. So here, then we can use I like sharpening my pencils like this with the blade. I'm not sure if you can see this on camera. Yep. So I just kind of go like this so that there's some sharp edges but also flat edges that you can use for shading. So the sharp edge can be to kind of go over those defining areas. If I had a black, I think I would go in with that more. You can find those rolls again. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for now. Well, let's add a bit of definition to his tusks. Or her tusks. No, it's his tusks. And oop. There, so if you've started at home, just keep going. And we're done. Thank you everyone for watching. I hope you had fun and that you learned something today. And if you like, you can tag me on Instagram so I can see your creations. So have a great summer.